They say eyes are windows to the soul, right? But what if that soul is broken, tormented, and seething with an ancient fury? What if those windows, made of cold, hard glass, don't just offer a peek, but a terrifying one-way ticket into a nightmare you can never wake up from? Get ready, because we're about to talk about just such a thing. In the shadowy corners of paranormal lore, few things creep us out as much as a doll. So lifelike, yet so unnervingly still. They look familiar, but they can hold something utterly alien. Now, stories of cursed toys are whispered everywhere, across generations and cultures. But the legend of one particular doll is a truly chilling example. She doesn't have a verified spot in any museum records, and historians can't agree on where she came from. Her story is a patchwork of fear, fragmented accounts, and the chilling warning that gives our tale its name. We're talking about a porcelain doll, known in these dark stories as Alara, whose delicate painted face and shimmering glass eyes are said to be a gateway to unspeakable horror. This isn't some artifact you'll find behind museum glass, confirmed by scholarly papers. Nope, it's a story. A piece of chilling folklore that's stuck around, a warning that echoes in the anxious minds of anyone who hears it. The legend of Alara and her curse? It's a journey straight into escalating dread. The story, as pieced together from these unsettling tales, often kicks off in the late 19th century. This was a time when porcelain dolls were made with such meticulous, almost creepy artistry. Alara, they say, was no different. Her porcelain skin, flawless, her lips curved into a subtle, almost sad smile, and her hair, the color of spun moonlight, framed a face of innocent beauty. But it was her eyes, always her eyes, that grabbed you and wouldn't let go. Made from deep sapphire blue glass, they had a depth, a startling clearness that seemed to mimic life just a bit too closely. Legend whispers that Alara was commissioned by a wealthy, grieving family for their only daughter, also named Alara, a child taken by a sudden, tragic illness. The doll was meant to be a memorial, a perfect little statue to sit in the child's empty room, a silent friend to their unending sorrow. But grief, as it often does in these dark tales, can open doors to things best left shut. The child's mother, desperate and lost in her grief, is said to have dabbled in forbidden rituals, begging for a sign, for any part of her daughter to stay, and it's here the legend really darkens. The tormented spirit of young Alara, snatched from life too soon, confused and anguished, didn't find peace. Instead, it's believed her very essence got stuck, anchored to the pristine porcelain shell made in her image. The first signs were small things, easy to brush off as tricks of the light or the usual creaks of an old house. A misplaced ribbon, the faint, almost silent sound of a child's sigh when no child was there. The doll, left facing one way in its glass display case, would sometimes be found hours later, its head tilted just so, its glass eyes seeming to follow anyone who moved in the room. The family, already deep in mourning, at first found a strange comfort in this, wanting to believe it was their daughter's gentle spirit. But that comfort soon started to sour into a creeping, unnameable dread. The doll's unblinking stare began to feel less like a memorial and more like a silent, constant watch. The heart of Alara's terrifying reputation, the bit that gives the legend its chilling punch, is the powerful curse linked to her glass eyes. Never look directly into its glass eyes, the warning always goes, for they are not just a reflection, but a doorway. It's said that anyone who dared meet that unblinking, glassy gaze for too long invited the child's tormented spirit into their own minds, becoming unwilling participants in her never-ending sorrow and rage. Early accounts, those scattered stories that form the base of this legend, talk about a growing unease in the house. Servants would complain of vivid nightmares after cleaning the room where Alara was kept. Nightmares filled with a little girl, desperate cries, and the cold, steady stare of porcelain eyes. Visitors who lingered too long in front of the doll's display case spoke of sudden, inexplicable waves of deep sadness, a chilling emptiness that stuck to them for days. The family themselves weren't safe. The father, a man of science and logic, initially laughed off the growing superstitious fear. Yet, even he started to experience unsettling things. Important papers would disappear from his study, only to show up days later in Alara's room, tucked beside the doll. He'd hear his deceased daughter's favorite lullaby being hummed, the sound faint and distant, but definitely there. The mother, already fragile, slipped further into a world of shadows, claiming Alara spoke to her. She said the voice was a twisted echo of her lost child's, filled with both pleading and a budding malice. She'd spend hours in front of the doll, her own eyes wide, reflecting the sapphire glass, her sanity slowly coming undone. The real horror, it seemed, was saved for those who truly connected, who let themselves be drawn into the doll's gaze. The stories claim these people started to see things, fleeting glimpses of a girl in old-fashioned clothes out of the corner of their eye, reflections in mirrors that showed not their own face, but Alara's. As Alara's legend unfolds, the strange things attributed to her presence become more and more hostile. The sadness that first marked the encounters starts to mix with a real sense of anger, like a spirit lashing out from its porcelain prison. Subsequent owners, because the original family, according to most versions, eventually fell to tragedy or madness, inherited Alara, and with her, the escalating curse. One unverified tale speaks of an antique doll collector who got his hands on Alara in the early 20th century. At first, he was thrilled by her amazing craftsmanship. But soon, his home was plagued by a chilling cold that no fire could chase away, and it was centered around the room where Alara was displayed. Objects near the doll would reportedly fly off shelves with violent force. Pets refused to even enter the room, whining and scratching at the door like they were trying to escape some unseen tormentor. The collector, a healthy man, started suffering from night terrors. He'd wake up with unexplained scratches on his arms, and the vivid, horrifying image of Alara standing at the foot of his bed, her glass eyes glinting in the dark. He supposedly tried to lock the doll away in an attic trunk, only to find it the next morning sitting calmly in his favorite armchair, its gaze fixed on the doorway. Another story, passed down in whispers, tells of a young woman who inherited Alara from a distant, eccentric relative. Not knowing the doll's dark reputation, she put it on her nightstand. The first night, she couldn't sleep, feeling overwhelmingly like she was being watched. The second night, she woke up to the sound of soft weeping, which seemed to be coming from the doll itself. On the third night, the story goes, she woke up screaming, claiming she'd seen the doll's eyes glowing faintly in the dark and had felt an icy touch on her cheek. She tried to sell Alara, but every potential buyer would, after a short time, return the doll, talking about overwhelming feelings of dread, strange accidents, or disturbing visions. The curse, it seemed, wasn't just tied to owning Alara, but to any long exposure to her unholy gaze. The psychological toll on those who lived with Alara was huge, with tales of paranoia, hallucinations, and a slow slide into madness becoming trademarks of the doll's dreadful legacy. If these tales of the unseen send a shiver down your spine, if the mystery of what lies beyond our understanding calls to you, why not subscribe and ring that bell? You wouldn't want to miss our next trip into the shadows that are always lurking just out of sight. Perhaps the most terrifying thing about Alara's legend is how persistent her presence is, how useless all attempts to get rid of her reportedly are. The stories are all pretty clear on this. Alara can't be easily thrown away, destroyed, or escaped. Her curse is stubborn, her attachment to the world of the living, or maybe to her porcelain body, is absolute. One story describes an owner, driven to desperation by the escalating paranormal activity and the mental torture inflicted by the doll, who tried to bury Alara in the woods. He supposedly put her in a lead-lined box, drove miles to a remote, desolate spot, and buried her deep in the earth, hoping to seal away the horror for good. For a few weeks, peace returned to his home. The heavy atmosphere lifted, the nightmares stopped. But then, one stormy night, he was woken by a frantic scratching at his front door. When he opened it, he found the mud-caked, lead-lined box on his doorstep. Inside, Ilara sat, her porcelain face calm, her glass eyes seemingly brighter, more accusing than ever. Another chilling account tells of an attempt to destroy Ilara by fire. The owner, a practical person pushed beyond their limits, supposedly threw the doll into a blazing furnace. He watched, with grim satisfaction, as the flames licked at her dress and started to char her porcelain skin. Yet, the next morning, among the cold ashes of the furnace, Ilara was found, soot-stained and cracked, but mostly intact. Her glass eyes, however, were said to have taken on a fiery, evil gleam, and the hauntings that followed were reportedly more violent, more personal than ever before, as if trying to destroy her had only enraged the spirit inside. These tales hammer home the horrifying idea that Ilara isn't just a haunted object, but a thinking curse, an entity that refuses to be banished. The glass eyes, the focus of her power, always survive, always return to fix their unblinking stare on the world of the living, making sure that her torment, and the torment of those she meets, goes on and on. The legend of Ilara, the porcelain doll with the inescapable glass eyes, is still a powerful story in the shadowy world of supernatural folklore. She's not a headline, not some documented artifact locked away. Instead, she lives in the chilling stories told late at night, in the unease we feel when we see something too lifelike, yet totally without life. The heart of her terror is the idea of an innocent object twisted into a channel for unimaginable pain and relentless evil. The murdered child, the tormented spirit, the unblinking stare that promises not just a reflection of our own fear, but a ticket into a shared nightmare. So, what's the ultimate warning of Ilara's curse? Maybe it's a caution against the depths of grief, a reminder that some doors, once opened, can never really be closed. Or perhaps it's a more basic fear, the fear of our own creations turning on us, of innocence lost and twisted into something predatory. The tales don't give easy answers, only growing dread and that persistent image of those sapphire glass eyes. Where is Ilara now? If such a doll, or the energy that fuels her legend, truly exists, she could be anywhere, tucked away in a forgotten attic, waiting in an antique shop, or maybe even right now her glassy gaze is falling upon some unsuspecting new person. The story of Ilara is a stark reminder. Some legends last because they tap into our deepest anxieties, and the idea that a simple porcelain doll could be a window to such profound horror, that looking into its eyes could seal your doom, is a fear that will likely keep haunting our collective imagination. The most chilling thought is that the next pair of glass eyes you meet might just be looking back with an intelligence and a history, far more terrifying than you could ever imagine. What do you think about the legend of Ilara? Do you believe such a powerful curse could get tied to an inanimate object? Share your theories and any similar chilling stories you know in the comments below. And if this journey into the doll's curse held your gaze, remember to like this video and share it with someone who dares to explore the darkness.